Thank you very much. So my section of this presentation focuses on my qualitative PhD research and therefore returning again to details of the lived experience of families where there was parental mental illness. So before I began, I just wanted to acknowledge and thank the families who chose to share their experience with me. It was deeply personal for them, and I recognise the privilege I had to be allowed to collect their perspectives and to share them here. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. And all the names of the participants in the presentation are pseudonyms. So I just wanted to summarise some of the findings of my qualitative research as a way of sharing that lived experience to contextualise a little bit a lot of the prevalence data that we've heard as part of our presentation today. So this was the title of my thesis, and I conducted 28 interviews with parents, partners and children over all of Northern Ireland in order to gather a whole family perspective. So I was very keen that I wanted to gather a whole family perspective, and that was what the influence of Think Family and family focused practice had on my research. And the graphic that you see here is my family knot framework, which I had to develop because it turned out that gathering a whole family perspective was quite complex. So it was more complicated than if I had have chosen to gather the experience of one, or other member of the family. And it's based on a Celtic knot. This particular type of Celtic knot happens to be called a family knot. It's also known as a Trinity knot. And I used that imagery really to help conceptualise how I would understand the family members and the interconnections between them. So we talked a little bit, and in Kim's presentation she was talking about systemic practice, and that was really key for me to understand the interconnections between the family members, the relationships, and how they existed within the social context, and also how external entities might seek to engage with them. So aside from the original research, I also completed a systematic review. This is now being prepared to be published with Campbell, UK and Ireland, and there's a protocol which is currently published, and the details are on the slide there. I don't want to report these findings in full, but I did want to share some brief details because this review which was focused on qualitative experiences of families, encompassed 22 studies, which was 350 parents, partners and children from all over the world. And the idea is that that can provide additional evidence for a shared experience, potentially, some commonality of experience. And so the meta-analysis of these studies resulted in 3 overarching themes, as you can see, which took on a temporal dimension as parents shared details of a traumatic past, dealing with a challenging present and a hopeful future. And further to this, several sub-themes emerged. A couple of insights I just wish to highlight here include that parents experiencing mental illness are likely to be more isolated in the present as a result of difficult relationships in the past, so either difficulties in the family of origin, in partnerships, or both. And that additional isolation, while also dealing with a challenging circumstance, it's additionally difficult, obviously. And the results also highlighted the extent to which children wish to be a part of the recovery process, and suggested that it would be difficult to shut them out of this, and that really it would be ideal to find a way to better support them in being involved in the recovery process, because they will take a role. This is their family and they care about them, and we'll see a little bit more about that as we go on. So, as I said, my research sought to explore the experience of family here in Northern Ireland, and was influenced by Think Family and family focused practice, and wanting to try and capture a whole family perspective. So this is a summary of the findings, and I wouldn't have time to present them all here, but they did include the transgenerational impact of trauma, including from experiences of paramilitarism, but also from intergenerational experiences of mental illness and substance use in the family of origin of the parents that we interviewed. And from the analysis emerged a picture of families working hard to deal with the impact of something out of their control, wanting to seek support, but also cautious about seeking support. And the research showed the impact on children and partners and the clear resilience of these participants. So I wanted to focus on a few of these experiences in my presentation today. So this is an overview across the family experience. So as you can see here under the title Parentification, children shared ways in which they felt responsible or tried harder or attempted to relieve some of the burden of the unwell parent. And these are quite young children who have been quoted here, but they're concerned about the adults in their life and they want to help. The evidence from carers, which I feel is an under-researched group, and was very keen to highlight the voices of people who were acting as carers, suggested that they shouldered an increased burden of responsibility within the family, often taking on maybe an unequal share of the childcare work or both, as well as caring for their partner. And it's a role that's so important to acknowledge. It's known that this caring burden has potential serious consequences for their own physical and mental health. However, there were also many single-parent participants who unfortunately didn't have that supportive partnership, which might have eased some of the challenges. So finally on this slide we see the theme of normalisation of distress. So parents repeatedly shared that they avoided showing their distress in front of family members and even more so external actors, and expressed a sense of resignation and acceptance that this was just how it was. They played down and normalised the difficulties they were experiencing, and this was prompted by a few motivating factors, including to minimise the potential of interference, but also very significantly to avoid impact to children. And then also, as we see, due to guilt and shame that they were experiencing mental health symptoms at all. However, there was enormous resilience demonstrated by these families. Many of the participants were either actively or seeking to become supporters in some way themselves. And it's so important to acknowledge the strength that these families continued to show. One significant finding that emerged in participants' discussion of engaging with services was an expression of a paradox regarding self-disclosure. So clients are discouraged to be open and honest, the reward being a more authentic therapeutic alliance and better potential for change, more cooperative relationship. The more they share, however, the more they risk disclosing information that puts them at risk of sanction. And this is a significant barrier for parents when seeking help, due to the potential of judgment if they're open or they disclose too much in a variety of settings, including social work, general medical practice, psychological services. So there was a real ambivalence about service involvement. People really do want to access support, and they're frustrated by the difficulty in accessing support, but they are also often mistrustful of engaging with services. So the recommendations I took completely from participants' words, because I asked everybody that was involved in the study, parents, children, partners, what do you think we could do? What do you think would be helpful? And so what they wanted us to know was they wanted services for partners, more support for partners. They wanted us to consider that there but for fortune go ye or go I, and we have talked about this, multiple presenters have talked about this today. These are circumstances that any of us can find ourselves in. and they want to be approached with empathy and understanding. And parents with mental ill health want to be acknowledged as parents in their parenting role, and they consider their parenting identity as primary. And their parenting status should be acknowledged and supported, even in circumstances where families, can't stay together in the myriad ways that might present. And they want access to practical and helpful support with a parenting focus. Often was what was reflected in the experiences. And also, they very strongly want help to mitigate the impact on children. However, the challenges and impact on families in their entirety shouldn't be minimised. And these last two quotes, in Kim's presentation, there was a demonstration of the wisdom of children, and I think these are another couple of examples, because I was really startled at how insightful the children that I interviewed were. So, children need support, but not just support, they need to understand. And by understanding, that can reduce the stigma that they feel, the confusion that they feel, and what is going on with their parent, and also the self-blame that they might experience. And then the last quote there is from a little boy who, typical me, didn't even occur to me that an app was a good idea. But for a young child who's a digital native, who is using technology all the time, he said, "What about an app? Because it could reach so many people." And I said, "Well, look, if I develop an app, I'm going to come back and we'll launch it together." But I think it's so important to listen to children. They have a lot to say, and these are their families, and they will get involved. So we have to support them in that. Thank you.